Welcome back. You see, Nigeria's power sector has been plagued by inefficiencies, insufficient generation capacity, and an unreliable grid that is as unreliable as my relationships, but who's counting? Leaving millions of citizens and businesses struggling with inconsistent electricity supply. In a bold move to tackle this crisis, the federal government has unveiled a $23.2 billion energy access plan aimed at expanding electricity coverage and driving sectorial growth. It's spearheaded by the Minister of Power, Adebayo, Adelabu. Now, this ambitious initiative promises major reforms, increased investments, and a commitment to closing Nigeria's enormous energy gap. At the heart of this plan is the question of feasibility and execution. How exactly does the government intend to fund and implement this massive initiative? What role would private sector participation play? And critically, can this plan deliver tangible improvements where previous efforts have failed?
So, to find out, joining us, we are joined by a very interesting current affairs or public affairs analyst, Wisdom Chapp-Jumbo. Together, we're going to be examining the broader implications of this initiative.
Well, joining us now to dissect the implications of, this energy plan, this energy access plan, is public affairs analyst Wisdom Chapp-Jumbo, and we're going to be examining the broader implications of this initiative, its potential impact on households and businesses, and whether this marks a true turning point for Nigeria's power sector. Wisdom, do you have wisdom for us this morning?
I'll try my best.
Good morning to you.
Morning,
welcome.
Thank you.
Listen, Nigeria's power sector has faced quite, I made a joke about, I'll leave it. But Nigeria's power sector has had its fair share of failures.
Yes.
I would say fair share. I mean, for as long as I remember, I don't think I've lived where there's 24-hour power supply.
Really?
Except I were paying for it. You get what I mean? Like in Nigeria, it's not, you don't have 24-hour power supply except you pay the extra cost privately.
Okay.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
And so with this $23.2 billion plan, what's it going to do? What difference will it make? Would it add any value to us?
Okay, good morning and thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here with your wisdom.
I'm just so sorry to hear that you've not really lived in a place where there's 24 hours.
In this Nigeria?
Yes, there is. In my local government in River State, the Bonny local government, there is 24 hours.
Why is that?
Even though it's shaking now.
Why is that?
But if you go to Jos too, there's a place in Jos.
Why is that?
In Jos, so in Bonny we have the Bonny Utility Company.
There you go.
Yeah,
you're being honest. You're making it sound.
Yeah, so but it's where we are getting to in the power sector. In Jos too, they have, I think it's NASCO. A power company also that sort of provides.
Exactly.
I can't remember the details.
So privatized, they're able to.
So it's where we are getting to with the establishment or the passing into act, the Electricity Act of 2023, signed by President Tinubu when he came into office. So that is the direction we are heading to now, where states take charge of generation, distribution, and transmission, and also the regulation, of power in their own geographical location is where we are heading to, and we think that is the game changer for the sector, where this state will take charge of this. Now coming back to your question on what this funding would really do for Nigeria, this funding mentioned was part of the National Energy Compact that was presented at the Dar es Salaam Summit, African Energy Summit in Tanzania, just last week. Yes. And the power minister, of course, presented this on behalf of the federal government. And the president was also there to sign to and endorse the commitment, which he was part of 30 African leaders that were there, for that endorsement. Fantastic. Right. So what this means is Nigeria has committed to indeed putting more work to the electrification and, of course, closing the energy access gap in the country. And that compact, if you read it, they've tried to put in a few targets for themselves that they want to set to meet. And I think it's very good for a good start. And if they can live up to that commitment and that compact, maybe in the next 5 years, we might see slightly good progress, because the situation is very bad as at the moment. 86 million Nigerians don't have access to energy. And that's a problem for us. And that's a very big problem because energy itself contributes a lot to the economy. And if many businesses cannot rely on constant power in the country, then we have a big problem. But like I said, the game changer here is what was already in the Electricity Act that was passed in 2023. So far, since then, about 10 states have been able to decentralize, that policy, and their state assemblies have set up what we call, the electricity market. So with this now, and with NEC also, overseeing all of this, we hope that this will change. So citizens of each state, instead of holding the state government, the federal government will now hold their state government, responsible for the issue of power.
You just used the word here, which I find very interesting, which has popped up many times. You hope that this will let me land.
We have to hope.
It's not the first time we saw this with NEPA, PC and King. We thought the change would come with the change of the name. It's been decades since after. So how so sure are we that these funds would first of all be funded, and then the allocation of these funds, how so sure are we that it will be effective? We know Nigeria, racketeering that goes on and all of this. This is $23 billion now. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the allocation, how are we sure that this will be effective?
So just that amount, what that compact is saying is to achieve electrified Nigeria, it will cost, the whole entire program will cost $23 billion. Part of that funding, about $15 billion, will come from the private sector.
Okay.
So where my worry now is, reading that compact, is how will federal government indeed encourage private funding, into the sector? Because, as private investors, they will put in money, where they are not sure they can get. So there are a lot of work that the federal government need to do to attract this funding. Already in the energy sector itself, last year, they were able to attract about $6 billion into the energy sector as of last year. So this goes into different aspects of the energy sector, from oil and gas to renewables and all of that, about $6 billion last year, which is good. But now, without policy consistency, I worry that investors will want to put in money. So we have to be able to get it right with our policies. So that's the first step we need to start, because $15 billion we want to attract from private funding into this is a huge one. And if the private funders don't see the commitment of the government itself, then I don't see how we are going to achieve that.
Two things. Sorry, Judith. No. But still, based on that, is this a complete overhaul of the entire system? Is that what they're telling? And if it's a complete overhaul and that we're attracting PPP investment here, how affordable will electricity be after then if we're still grappling with the hike? Very well, what the government says is a minimal hike in the distribution between bands.
Okay, so good one. Yes, so that funding is to cover the entire power sector itself. They are looking at
overhaul.
Yes, an overhaul. So they are looking at on-grid, they are looking at off-grid. And the commitment from Mr. President signing to that declaration in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania last week is they are going to increase the share of renewables, which of course we have presently at 22%. It will go up to about 50%, by the end of before 2030.
Renewables, you mean?
Renewables. So currently there's a huge share we're using on hydro, but they want to introduce it to the energy mix. Solar and all of that, which of course we are seeing a fast-growing adoption within the country. Right. So before, when you fly into the country, you see the whole roofs are empty. But these days, if you watch closely, a lot of solar panels are going. So adoption is fast-growing, which is good. So what the federal government is saying with that, signing that declaration and commitment. So it's a commitment, by these 30 African leaders that look, we are committed that we are going to work, because Africa itself, 600 million Africans are, don't have energy access. Out of that 600 million, Nigeria contributes significantly to that number. So we have like a huge share of it. And now what they have gone to agree is that before 2030, these African leaders are saying we're also agreeing to pull out or to pull in 300 million people. So 300 million Africans are going to have access to energy. You know, so Nigeria itself, presently, we have 86 million people, you know, that don't have, they lack access to energy. Some don't have reliable energy access. So there's so much work for Nigeria. So if Nigeria can achieve more, then, I mean, we have already, you know, solved part of that problem for Africa itself.
You talked about, you know, how the private sector, this is about, if you look at the percentile of it, say about 60% of it is mostly reliant on, you know, the private sector, about $15 billion.
Yeah, $15 billion.
So that's meaning like, what, 60% of that thereabout is reliant on the private sector. And there's something very critical that you raised, and that was our policy stability.
Yeah.
In our current regulatory environment that we find ourselves, whether past administration and this current administration, do you see this being long-lasting, in solving our power issues in the long term?
You know, the way you look at policy, when you try to analyze it, you look at the body language of the present government. Yes, maybe we have lacked trust in the past of different governments, but where we are today now, we have to look at the body language of the present government we are in and see if there's any possibility. The only thing that gives me somewhat assurance, let me move slightly away from hope, but some assurance is, of course, having our president being part of that 30 African leaders to first give that commitment. Aside that, Nigeria was part of the 12, you know, nations that presented their National Energy Compact, you know, which is good. This is fantastic progress. So we have this compact. We have the energy transition, Nigerian energy transition plan that was presented again in 2022. We have the Electricity Act of 2023. We have these three instruments, and what investors want to see from the government is how are you staying, you know, consistently with these, you know, already established laws you have, policies. How are you consistent with that? How are you committing to that? How are you staying true to them? So 10 states from the Electricity Act, they've already set up their market. Lagos is part of it. You know, Enugu and the other 10 states. I can't remember all their states now, but 10 of them, NEC has reported they've done that. So what it means by the act is NEC is going to transfer, you know, that whole workings to the 10 states to begin to manage their market in their. So what the states will now do, which we want to encourage most of them, is some of this, your electricity market and agencies you're going to form at the state level, make sure you put competent hands. Power is like medicine, where you must have a professional, you know, administer it. so those are some of our worries. The state government want to see that they put in professionals, they look at meritocracy, and they appoint qualified people to manage. Investors will also be looking at that. You know, so that's one of the little things we need to look at.
Based on these investors and these private partnerships that we're talking about, that you have so much hope for, the question remains whether it's going to be as decentralized as we think it is. Because when you look at the national grid, the only problem why it affects every single Nigerian when it goes down is because it's central. So how decentralized will it be, especially when you impute renewable energy? Are we saying that investors will be marketing units that are not connected to a national grid? Is that how we're going to light up Nigeria, everybody possessing their own ability to generate energy? Or would there be a unit or units where people can source power from, literally? And would these be the renewable infrastructure that these investors are going to set up?
So we have to move away from the grid. The national grid as we have it is part of the major issues we're having. So we have to move away from the national grid as it is. It's obsolete, it's ancient, it is not working and serving our purpose as we have it today in 2025. So we have to move away from it. So what that Electricity Act is now saying is it has empowered, you know, before, because of the lacunas in the Constitution, the states could not. And so now those issues have been resolved with the passing of that Electricity Act in 2023. So what it means is that all 36 states in the Federation, in the Federal Republic of Nigeria, now have the power. So they can generate, they can transmit, and they can distribute. It means that if an investor comes with his money to Lagos State, for example, the investor can invest in generation. And the Lagos State government, you know, through its policy in Lagos State, can make the environment enabling for that investor to, of course.
Where they generate from, whether hydro.
No, so in fact, the commitment is there's going to be a huge contribution of renewables in that energy mix. what it means again with that policy is that Lagos, for example, in distribution, can decide that we want all discos in Lagos State must ensure that all customers have meter. So now we break that barrier from what we have it today, that where we are struggling with metering across the country. Lagos State can put it in its policy as a disco, which they have their policy, and I have not read it into details, I'm still studying it, but Lagos State can have it in its policy now that for you to operate as a disco in Lagos, all customers must have meter, and it's your responsibility to give them meter. So all of this issue of metering cannot be resolved at the state level, which other states can do the same. So those bottlenecks we had, where we all relied on the national grid, at the state level we begin to solve it, one at a time, and which is indeed possible. So yeah.
A skeptic like myself will be watching and be like, please, did we not do this before? There was a statewide plan that happened with the state education agencies that was established, and I think it was during, correct me if I'm wrong now, I think it was during the Good Luck.
Is that the Rural Identification Agency?
Rural Identification, it was during the Good Luck and the late Yaradua administration, and then Good Luck and Namadi Sambu, which was a huge rollout, and we saw states and local governments and neighboring and bordering towns come onto the grid. And up until then, even though they're on the grid, it's one thing to be on the grid, it's another to have power. So as a skeptic like myself who's watching and like, I just call it wisdom. He's giving us 23.2 billion.
But I'll tell you.
What's exactly?
I'll tell you.
Can this work?
The REA, which you've referred to, is the Rural Identification Agency. They are working really hard. Trust me. And because of them, because of their work, a lot has advanced, especially within the off-grid space. Issue of collection of data and all of those things we need, to show that there's some impact on the sector has indeed advanced. So the REA's work, that agency is in fact at the center of what we need to solve the problem of electrification in Nigeria now. Just yesterday, the president has just now appointed a substantial MD, Mr. Abba, to man the agency as managing director. So there's more work cut out for him. The National Energy Compact that was presented at the summit last week in Dar es Salaam, that agency will be driving a huge part of it. Providing mini grids for different communities and all of that, and managing some funding from partners like the World Bank, which they currently are doing, in a huge way. So we need to support that agency much more. I won't lie, because I know a lot in the sector. That agency is working day and night. We need to follow their work. Trust me, you can look them up, the REA, and follow their activities. And I won't hold breath for them, but because we see the successes they are making in different ways, because I also play hugely within the off-grid space. So that is where the solution lies. And I like that the government is indeed supporting them. So we need to give them more support. But in the next 5 years, I'm very curious to also see how speedily we can work to close this energy access gap as a country.
Hopefully and with assurance. Thank you very much, Chap.
Thank you.
It's been a
Chapp-Jumbo. There you go. Wisdom Chapp-Jumbo. Many thanks. We appreciate you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.